When you look at an architectural blueprint, there is this expectation of absolute precision.
Oh, sure.
Like it is mathematical.
Yeah.
It's completely clean. The lines are perfectly straight. The load-bearing walls are exactly where they need to be. And the HVAC system routes just flawlessly through the ceilings.
Right. It is ideal.
Yeah, you look at the paper with its crisp blue ink, and you think to yourself, wow, this is a perfect structure. Everything makes total sense.
Right, because blueprints are, they're binary. They exist in this vacuum where physics and geometry are literally the only rules.
Exactly.
It works perfectly on paper. And human beings, especially those of us who deal with really large institutions, we find that incredibly comforting. We like things to be visible. We like them to be neatly categorized in a spreadsheet and mathematically sound.
But then you actually step off the paper and you walk onto the actual construction site.
And that is a different world.
It is. You pour the concrete, and suddenly there's a torrential downpour that totally ruins the cure.
Yep. Or the lumber you ordered just sits in the sun and warps.
Right. Or the plumbing doesn't quite line up with the municipal grid because, I don't know, the city's maps were 10 years out of date.
That happens all the time.
It really does. Suddenly, the perfect theory meets the very messy reality of the physical world. And that is exactly what it feels like when you step into the world of church governance, bylaws, and synodical resolutions.
Oh, absolutely.
We're looking at a landscape that is honestly kind of murky. The institutional blueprints look perfect, but real congregational life is just inherently messy.
It is the absolute definition of administrative and theological muddy waters. Because when we talk about church governance, you aren't just dealing with wood and steel and concrete.
No, you're dealing with people.
Exactly. You are dealing with local congregations scattered across vastly different cultural contexts. You are dealing with human egos, institutional survival instincts, and above all, you're dealing with the actual delivery of the gospel itself.
Right. And trying to regulate the delivery of the gospel with, like, corporate bylaws is always going to create friction.
It has to. It always does.
And that friction is exactly why we are here today. So welcome, delegate. Yes, you.
We are talking to you.
If you are listening to this right now, you are likely packing your bags, reviewing your binders, and preparing for the crucial 2026 LCMS Convention in Phoenix, Arizona.
Probably feeling a little overwhelmed, too.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
You've been tapped on the shoulder to represent your congregation or your local circuit, and you have a massive, physically heavy stack of reading ahead of you.
A stack that can feel entirely overwhelming, to say the very least. I mean, it's hundreds of pages of legalistic language, all those whereases and resolves.
Right. It is very easy to just skim the titles and vote based on how nice the title sounds.
Which is honestly the most dangerous thing a delegate can do.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to take a deep dive into your source material. Specifically, we are looking at today's business Issue 1.
Issue 1, yes.
We are going to zoom in on pages 82 through 94, which cover the resolutions coming out of Floor Committee for Lives Together.
Such an important committee.
It really is. We are going to evaluate the text, the direction, the underlying structural incentives, and the authority flow of 10 very specific resolutions.
Right, because we want to know what these resolutions actually do to the church on the ground, not just what their titles claim they do.
Exactly. We need to see past the blueprint.
And to do that effectively without getting lost in the bureaucratic weeds, we need a guiding lens. We cannot just read these as dry administrative texts.
Because the church is not a secular corporation.
Exactly. So we are going to analyze these documents through what we're calling a concerned but fair life together posture.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's slow down and define that for the delegate. Before we look at a single resolution, what does that posture actually look like in practice?
That's a great question.
Like, what should our listener be actively looking for when they step up to the microphone in Phoenix?
So it means we are looking for 3 key dynamics in every single resolution. First, we are looking for kingdom over castle.
Kingdom over castle.
Right. What I mean by that is, does this resolution advance the kingdom of God outwardly into the local community? Or does it merely build a protective administrative castle around the synodical institution?
Oh, I like that distinction.
Second, we are looking for the concept of low control with high accountability.
Meaning what, exactly?
Well, in a healthy church body, you want robust, unyielding doctrine. You want high accountability to the scriptures and the Lutheran confessions, but you want low administrative control.
Right.
You want to avoid suffocating micromanagement from the national office.
Okay, wait, let me stop you right there because I want to challenge that just a bit. You say kingdom over castle, but isn't a castle sometimes necessary?
Oh, sure.
I mean, we belong to a massive institution with universities, seminaries, pension funds, and historical archives. Don't we fundamentally need a castle to protect the kingdom from secular drift?
It's a great question, and it's really the core tension of any historic denomination. Yes, you need structure. You need a fortress to protect the theological treasury. But the problem arises when the maintenance of the castle becomes the primary mission.
Oh, when it takes over.
Exactly. When the drawbridge goes up and never comes down, you aren't a mission outpost anymore. You're just a museum.
Wow, just a museum. That is a stark image.
So the third thing we are looking for, and this answers your question perfectly, I think, is a fundamental check on the flow of service.
Okay, what does that mean?
Does this resolution ensure that the Synod, the institution itself, exists to serve the local congregations? Or does it demand that the local congregations exist to fund and serve the Synod's administrative structure?
Man, that flow of authority is the whole ballgame.
It really is.
Because fundamentally, the local congregation is where the actual action happens.
Mm.
It's where the word is preached on Sunday morning.
Right.
It's where the sacraments are administered to real people.
Huh.
If the structure gets flipped and the local church just becomes like a franchise location funding the corporate headquarters, we have a massive theological problem.
A huge one.
So keeping that lens firmly in place for you, the listener, I want to group these resolutions thematically rather than just reading a table of contents.
That makes the most sense.
Let's start by looking at a trio of resolutions that fundamentally rewrite how the LCMS decides what its mission should be. We're looking at resolutions 401, 402, and 403 as a package deal.
That is definitely the best way to approach them. They are intertwined in a way that isn't immediately obvious if you just read them sequentially.
Let's start with the shiny object up front. Resolution 401. It's titled, To Establish Tell the Next Generation as Synod Mission and Ministry Emphasis.
This is found on pages 82 to 83.
Right. So the basic goal here is formally adopting a brand new mission emphasis for the entire Synod for the upcoming 2026 to 2029 triennium.
And the theme is Christ is risen, tell the next generation.
Yeah. It aims to focus the Synod on intergenerational catechesis and outreach. Which sounds great, right?
It does, and when you dig into the justification they provide in the text, it sets an incredibly strong theological rationale.
What are they claiming?
They are making a very distinct claim that catechesis, which is the actual rigorous teaching of the faith, the Ten Commandments, the Creed, the Lord's Prayer, that is the absolute foundation for evangelism and family life.
Okay, so they aren't treating catechesis as just a separate academic silo that you stick kids in on a Wednesday night.
No, not at all. They are treating it as the actual engine of mission. And if you look at the source material, this is heavily supported by the cited scriptural and confessional documents.
Right.
They are grounding this emphasis deeply in the historical Lutheran understanding of how faith is actually passed down from one generation to the next.
I really appreciate that because so often in modern American Christianity, youth outreach just means, pizza parties, laser tag, and a watered-down motivational speech.
Oh, absolutely. Entertainment over substance.
But what stands out to me here, looking through our kingdom over castle lens, is how beautifully this frames our life together in an outward, gospel-focused way.
It really does.
Like, it doesn't read like an inward institutional directive. It isn't about protecting the brand or just increasing giving metrics.
No, it's not. And what's fascinating here is how it explicitly names real entities. It talks about real families, children, catechumens, and youth.
Actual people.
Yes. It treats life together as shared gospel work, not as a corporate strategy. When a resolution names the actual people in the pews, like the parents struggling to teach the catechism at the kitchen table after a long day at work, or the bivocational youth group leader, or the adult catechumen preparing for confirmation, it grounds the theology in reality.
It recognizes the messiness of the construction site, to use our earlier metaphor.
Exactly. It recognizes the rain and the warped lumber.
It also does a phenomenal job of keeping law and gospel clear. It distinguishes the core doctrine of faith formation from mere administrative preference.
Right.
It basically says this is what we believe, teach, and confess about passing on the faith without saying, and therefore every church must buy this specific 6-step binder from headquarters to do it.
Precisely. If we look at the mechanics of what the resolution actually authorizes, it assumes that local congregations are the primary engine for this catechesis.
Right. It doesn't assume that the Synod headquarters is going to swoop in and teach your children.
Exactly. And by doing that, it inherently strengthens trust and congregational life. It empowers the edges rather than fortifying the center.
So it hits that dynamic we want.
Yes, low control, but high accountability to the Word of God and the mandate to tell the next generation.
Now, for the delegate on the floor, we need to talk about parliamentary reality.
Oh, yes.
I heard this resolution is highly likely to end up on the consent calendar. So for someone who hasn't been a delegate before, or who just isn't an expert in Robert's Rules of Order, can you explain what the consent calendar actually is and how it works?
Absolutely. The consent calendar is essentially the parliamentary fast-pass lane at a convention.
Fast pass, I like that.
Yeah, so the floor committees review hundreds of overtures and draft these resolutions. If a resolution is deemed non-controversial, universally positive, and generally just good housekeeping, the committee will put it on the consent calendar.
Okay.
Instead of debating and voting on these items one by one, the convention will vote to approve the entire consent calendar in one massive block with zero debate.
So it saves a ton of time.
Huge amount of time. But if you, as a delegate, want to debate a resolution that is on the consent calendar, you have to formally request that it be pulled off the calendar before the vote happens.
And that requires a certain threshold of support, right?
Yes, you need a certain number of delegates to agree to pull it off for debate.
So 401 is probably going to sail through on the consent calendar because nobody is going to stand up at a microphone and say, actually, I oppose teaching the next generation about Jesus.
Right, it's a universally good thing.
But here's the critical pivot. 401 looks fantastic, but we cannot look at it in a vacuum because right behind it is Resolution 402.
Which is titled To Amend Bylaws to Refine Process for Creating Triennial Mission and Ministry Emphases.
And this is where the architectural blueprint radically shifts.
This is the heavy one.
Very heavy. Let me break down the actual mechanism they are voting on here.
Yeah.
This resolution proposes comprehensive structural bylaw changes.
Specifically, it amends bylaws 3.3.1.3, 3.8.2, 4.2.1, and 5.2.3.
That is a lot of bylaws.
It is.
And the stated goal is to centralize the creation of these triennial mission emphases directly to the national mission boards and the Synod president.
Right.
And crucially, and this is the part you, the listener, need to really pay attention to, it completely eliminates the mandatory local circuit forums from the process.
And if we dissect the underlying arguments they are using to justify this change, the primary claim is that the current process lacks clarity and efficiency.
Meaning what?
Well, currently the process involves a lot of grassroots input. Local circuits gather, they discuss what the mission emphasis should be, and they send that up the chain. The argument in the document is that this takes too much time, it's messy, and it's inefficient. The underlying assumption here is that centralization equals efficiency, and that efficiency is the highest good.
Okay, let's talk about these circuit forums. Explain to me what a circuit forum actually is, practically speaking, and why a delegate should care if it gets deleted from the bylaws.
Sure. So a circuit is a small geographic grouping of local congregations. Think of it as the most grassroots level of synodical organization. A circuit forum is an actual gathering of the pastors and lay delegates from those specific local churches.
Give me a picture of that.
Imagine a room of maybe 10 to 15 pastors and an equal number of lay leaders meeting in a church basement in, say, rural Iowa or urban Chicago or suburban Texas.
Right.
They are the ones actually doing the ministry in their specific context. Under the old bylaws, these forums had a mandatory voice in proposing the mission emphasis of the national church.
It forced the top to listen to the bottom. And unlike 401, which was all about kids and families and outward mission, this resolution frames our life together in a highly inward, institutional, and administrative way.
Oh, very much so.
It reads like a corporate restructuring manual. It is the definition of castle thinking.
It absolutely is. This raises an enormous question about trust and collaboration. By removing the mandatory local circuit forums, you are arguably weakening local congregational life.
You're taking away their voice.
Right. You are treating our life together as an exercise in institutional administration rather than shared gospel work. It protects and streamlines the center, the national mission boards, and the president's office rather than empowering the edges.
Okay, I have an analogy for this, and tell me if I'm being too cynical here.
Let's hear it.
Is this basically like a massive corporate headquarters deciding to just rip the employee suggestion box off the wall in the break room.
That's a good way to put it.
Management basically says reading all these handwritten suggestions from the floor workers takes way too long. We have data analysts at HQ who already know what the market needs, so we're just going to streamline the process by bypassing the workers entirely. Is that what's happening here?
That is precisely what it is structurally doing. It is saying the process of gathering your local contextual input is inefficient, so we are going to streamline it by ignoring you.
Wow.
But here is the theological problem. The LCMS prides itself on being an advisory synod.
Right.
It is a fundamental constitutional principle that the local congregations hold the primary authority and the synod exists to advise and serve them.
Not the other way around.
Exactly. When you rewrite the bylaws to remove practical pathways for local congregational participation in mission planning, you are executing a significant paradigm shift in the flow of authority.
Okay, let's dig deeper into the mechanics of 402 because the shift in authority is massive. Not only does it eliminate the circuit forums, it fundamentally alters the role of the district conventions, right?
Yes, it does.
Currently, districts have the authority to propose alternative mission emphasis. But under this new bylaw, they are limited to merely discussing what has already been handed down from the national boards.
It is a complete reversal of the kingdom over castle dynamic. It asks districts and local circuits to support the synodical structure's vision rather than the synodical structure supporting the local vision.
It's all flowing upwards now.
Right. It reflects higher control from the top, but with incredibly unclear accountability.
Break that down. Unclear accountability.
Think about it. If the national mission boards and the president unilaterally decide the emphasis, and the grassroots have no formal mechanism to propose alternatives, who holds the center accountable if the emphasis completely misses the mark for a local ministry?
That's a huge blind spot.
What if the national office decides the emphasis should be on urban church planting? That 60% of the synod consists of rural, aging parishes that desperately need revitalization resources. The feedback loop is severed.
So if I'm a delegate sitting on the floor in Phoenix, and this comes up for debate, what are my options? How do I handle this?
Well, first of all, this is highly unlikely to be on the consent calendar.
I would hope not.
Yeah, and if it is, someone will pull it off. This is a major structural change. If you are a delegate who believes in grassroots authority, you need to be prepared to go to the microphone.
Okay, and say what?
You could propose an amendment to the resolution. For instance, you could amend it to add provisions for optional circuit forum.
Oh, I see. Optional, not mandatory.
Right. If the mandatory nature is too burdensome, an amendment could ensure that local circuits still have a formal, recognized pathway to submit proposals if they choose to gather and actually do the work.
Okay, or what if they just think the whole thing is a bad idea? Like, leave the bylaws alone.
Then a delegate could propose a substitute resolution to form a task force.
A task force?
Yeah, the substitute resolution could say, hey, we acknowledge the current process is clunky, but before we permanently change the bylaws and strip away local voice, let's form a study committee of actual parish pastors and lay people to find a better way.
That seems prudent.
Because, listener, you really need to understand this. Once a bylaw is changed to centralized power, it is historically almost impossible to change it back.
Because institutions do not willingly surrender power once they acquire it.
Exactly.
That is a stark warning. Don't let the corporate buzzword of efficiency blind you to the permanent loss of local voice.
Precisely.
And this brings us to the third part of this trio, Resolution 403, to commend and sunset synod mission priorities, found on page 85.
This one is relatively brief, but it's the final piece of the puzzle that proves what is happening structurally.
Right. The basic action here is that this resolution gives thanks to God for the 2010 mission priorities, which were witness, mercy, and life together, and it formally sunsets them.
Right. It officially retires them after the 2023 to 2026 triennium to make way for the new emphasis we talked about in 401.
So for some historical context, those three priorities, witness, mercy, life together, they have been the branding and the organizing principle of the LCMS for over a decade.
Almost everything falls under them.
Every program, every board, every funding initiative was categorized under one of those three pillars.
And the assumption in this document is that those old priorities have basically run their course, or they are simply being superseded by the new catechesis emphasis.
It mostly frames our life together as institutional administration. It's essentially cleaning up the books.
Right. It's marking a transition from one era of institutional planning to the next.
Yes, and I will say it does a good job of safely distinguishing between core doctrine, which obviously never changes, and synodical administrative preference, which does change and can be sunsetted.
Absolutely. The threefold emphasis of witness, mercy, and life together is deeply biblical. We will always do those things.
We're not sunsetting the concepts.
Right. But as a specific programmatic priority driven by the national office, it is perfectly fine to retire it.
Okay, but let's connect the dots here, because you hinted earlier that these 3 resolutions are a package deal. How does retiring an old slogan tie into the power dynamic we just debated in 402?
Okay, so if we look at 401, 402, and 403 together, you see a masterclass in structural realignment.
Okay, lay it out for me.
By clearing the deck of the old established priorities in 403, and by simultaneously centralizing the power to dictate new priorities in 402, the Synod's national office is paving the way for a highly top-down approach to the new catechesis emphasis established in 401.
Oh, wow. Okay, that completely changes how I read this.
It's all connected.
So 401 looks great on its own. It's all about the kids and families and passing on the faith. Who could argue with that?
No one.
But when you realize that 402 just removed the local circuit's ability to shape that emphasis, and 403 swept away the old rules, 401 suddenly stops looking like an organic grassroots movement and starts looking like a mandate handed down from the castle.
Exactly. It's not that 401 is bad. Catechesis is essential.
Right.
The issue is how the Synod arrived at that emphasis. The listener is strongly urged to watch how these 3 resolutions interact on the convention floor. They are not isolated, standalone items. They are a legislative package that significantly alters how the Synod operates in relation to its congregations.
So if you vote yes on all 3 without thinking, you have just voted to centralize mission planning in St. Louis for the foreseeable future.
That is exactly what you were doing.
That is why we do the deep dive. You cannot just read the titles of these resolutions. You have to look at the structural incentive.
Always look at the structure.
All right, let's transition. So if the first trio of resolutions was all about what the church's mission is and who gets to decide it, this next cluster of resolutions is really about defining the boundaries.
Right. It's about who is allowed to do that mission and how tightly the center wants to hold the leash.
Let's move to Resolution 404. To clarify oversight and revitalize role of registered service organizations, found on page 86.
Now we are moving out of the parish and into the realm of specialized mercy ministries and institutional partnerships.
Let's explain what an RSO actually is.
Yeah.
RSO stands for Registered Service Organization.
Right.
These are not congregations. These are independent organizations that do specialized work under the broad umbrella of the LCMS.
Like what, exactly?
We're talking about food banks, adoption agencies, senior living facilities, orphanages, and disaster response teams.
Essential work.
Oh, absolutely. Now, this resolution reaffirms that the Board for National Mission, or the BNM, has direct oversight of these RSOs. It explicitly directs the BNM to monitor their confessional faithfulness and revitalize communication.
Let's look at the justification provided in the text. The primary concern raised here is theological and unity-based. The resolution wants to protect the doctrinal fidelity of mercy ministries that operate and raise funds while bearing the name Lutheran.
And I can completely understand that fear. If an adoption agency calls itself Lutheran, but starts operating under totally secular, modern, ethical frameworks that contradict Scripture, the Church has a massive public witness problem.
It reflects poorly on everyone.
Right. Through our kingdom versus castle lens, this is a very mixed, complicated framing. On one hand, it seeks to protect doctrine, which is a classic capital defense mechanism. We want to ensure our institutions are actually faithful.
Which is good.
But on the other hand, these RSOs exist to serve the physical needs of the neighbor, which is ultimate outward kingdom work.
The tension here revolves entirely around trust, collaboration, and the danger of bureaucracy. It aims to ensure faithful partnership, which is inherently good.
Okay.
But the underlying assumption that RSOs need tighter, centralized oversight from a national board in St. Louis could weaken trust if it's executed poorly. The language of the resolution leans heavily toward institutional administration.
Let's look at the mechanics. The resolution directs the BNM to prepare new recommendations and review criteria by the 2029 convention. So they have 3 years to build a new regulatory framework.
And structurally, this fortifies the Synod by increasing the BNM's authority and oversight capacity.
It reflects a substantially higher degree of control.
Yes, the stated goal is high accountability to the confessions, but we have to ask how that accountability will be actually measured.
Okay, here is my pushback, and I want to role play this a bit.
Let's do it.
Let's say I'm the director of a small RSO running a local food bank in a struggling post-industrial neighborhood in Ohio.
Yeah, okay, so you're on the ground.
Right. We are barely making payroll, we rely on volunteers, and we're handing out groceries to people who desperately need them in the name of Christ.
Good kingdom work.
How exactly does a national board evaluate my confessional faithfulness without bogging me down in administrative red tape?
That's the million-dollar question.
Are they going to send me a 40-page theological questionnaire every year? Are they going to audit my volunteer training manuals? Does this kind of oversight encourage outward mission, or does it actually discourage local charities from wanting to partner with the LCMS in the first place?
That is the exact nightmare scenario for an RSO, and it raises a critical question about practical implementation.
Because doctrine matters, absolutely. If an organization bears the name Lutheran, it should act like it.
Right. But if the review criteria designed by the BNM become an overwhelming bureaucratic burden, you are going to crush the kingdom work under the weight of the castle's drawbridge.
You will force a local food bank director to spend hours filling out compliance forms for St. Louis instead of actually sourcing food for the hungry.
So for the delegate on the floor, how do they balance the need for doctrinal fidelity with the need to let mercy workers actually do their jobs?
Yeah, what's the move here?
Delegates should look for potential amendments to make this process more collaborative and less punitive. For example, if you were at the microphone, you could propose an amendment adding a mandate for clear, streamlined reporting requirements so RSOs know exactly what to expect.
So limiting the administrative burden from the start.
Exactly. Better yet, propose an amendment that explicitly requires the BNM to include actual RSO directors and representatives in the design process of these new oversight metrics.
I love that.
If you want to build a sturdy bridge between the national church and the mercy workers, you need the people actually working in the mercy fields to help design the bridge. Don't just regulate them from a boardroom, include them.
Support the worker, don't just manage them. And that exact theme leads us perfectly into Resolution 405, to clarify nomenclature for chaplaincy and institutional care work, and to amend related bylaws found on pages 86 to 87.
We're sticking with the theme of specialized edge case ministries, but moving from organizations to individuals, specifically chaplains.
Right. This resolution proposes standardizing the terminology used for chaplaincy and institutional care work across the entire church. It requires amending bylaws 2.1.1, 3.8.2, and 6.2.2 to make it happen.
We need to understand what a specialized minister or a chaplain actually does.
Set the scene for us.
These are pastors or commissioned workers who do not serve a traditional congregation. They are operating in highly secular, high-stress environments. They are deployed with military units. They are walking the halls of maximum security prisons.
Tough environment.
They are in the intensive care units of secular hospitals. They are often incredibly isolated from the broader synodical fellowship.
And the arguments used in this resolution are purely administrative. The claim is that uniform terminology is needed for roster classification.
Right.
The assumption is that standardizing titles across the board improves supervision, order, and ecclesiastical endorsement.
We both agree on our reading of this one. This is overwhelmingly an inward institutional administrative focus. It treats our life together as database management rather than shared gospel work.
Let me push back. Isn't database management actually necessary?
I mean, sure.
For tax purposes, for legal liability, for pension and health benefits, doesn't the Synod need to know exactly who is doing what and have clean titles for everyone? If a chaplain gets sued or needs their ecclesiastical endorsement renewed for the military, doesn't a clean database actually protect them?
That is the steelman argument for this resolution, and it's a valid point. Yes, the administrative plumbing needs to work.
The pipes have to flow.
Right. However, from a structural perspective, this is a prime example of distinction keeping and higher control. It is asking specialized spiritual care workers, people who are already navigating massive bureaucratic hurdles in the military or the healthcare system, to conform to a new synodical structure.
Right, rather than giving them new practical pathways or resources for pastoral care.
So it's not giving them more tools to preach the gospel, it's just asking them to file different paperwork so their title fits neatly on a spreadsheet.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, notice the trend we've seen developing across Floor Committee 4.
The pattern is definitely there.
We are centralizing mission planning.
Right.
We are tightening oversight on RSOs. We are neatening the roster for chaplains.
It's all about tightening up the center.
Delegates need to ask a very pointed question when they look at these bylaws. Does this nomenclature change actually help a chaplain in a chaotic emergency room deliver the law and the gospel more effectively to a grieving family whose child just died.
Or is this just to make the database at the International Center look cleaner for the administrators?
That is a sharp, necessary critique.
Yeah.
So what are the floor strategy options here? If a delegate feels this is just HR busy work that disrupts people's ministries, what do they actually do?
If the nomenclature change seems overly burdensome or disruptive to current chaplains, some of whom have built entire careers in military ranks around their current ecclesiastical titles, you could explore a substitute resolution.
Like what?
A delegate could call for a comprehensive review of chaplaincy ministries with direct mandatory input from actual military and hospital chaplains before changing their titles.
Again, talk to the people doing the work.
At the very least, if the resolution proceeds, a delegate should propose an amendment adding a long transitional period or a grandfather clause for existing calls, so we aren't creating sudden administrative chaos for people currently serving in life or death fields.
Keep the focus on the mission, not the spreadsheet. Okay, let's move to something that always generates a massive amount of passion, debate, and sometimes outright conflict in the church.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Worship.
There it is.
We're looking at Resolution 406, to amend bylaws to reinstate Commission on Worship, located on pages 88 through 90.
Worship is the literal heartbeat of the church. It is where theology is actually consumed by the layperson. So this resolution is highly significant and deeply sensitive.
The mechanism here is bold. This proposes recreating a permanent standing commission on worship to develop resources and guidance for the entire synod.
Okay.
It amends bylaws 3.9.1 and 3.9.6 to build this structure. And this is the detail every delegate needs to highlight in yellow. It allocates approximately $175,000 annually to fund it.
Annually. Let's unpack the arguments they are making. The core claim is that worship is a vital unifying function that requires permanent, centralized guidance.
To support this legally, the resolution heavily cites the Synod's constitution, specifically Article 6, which calls the church to strive for uniformity in church practice.
And this is where the real tension lies. Striving for uniformity is in the Constitution, yes. But looking through our kingdom versus castle lens, this resolution strongly leans toward inward institutional self-protection.
How so?
It assumes that a centralized, fully funded commission sitting in an office is the absolute best vehicle for ensuring that local worship remains faithful.
It touches on a very deep nerve in the LCMS. Historically, the Synod has experienced worship wars.
Oh yes, decades of them.
Debates over traditional liturgy versus contemporary worship, organs versus guitars, hymnals versus screens. This resolution is clearly an attempt to manage that tension.
But it blurs a very important, delicate theological line, the line between forced uniformity and faithful unity in Christ.
Break that down for me. What is the difference between uniformity and unity in a Lutheran context?
True, scriptural unity is found in a shared, robust confession of the gospel and the right administration of the sacraments.
Meaning?
It means we all believe the same thing about who Jesus is, what baptism does, and what is actually happening in the Lord's Supper.
Right.
Uniformity, on the other hand, is about everyone using the exact same page number in the hymnal on Sunday morning, wearing the exact same vestments, and singing the exact same chant tones.
I see.
A centralized commission can try to enforce uniformity through administrative pressure, but it cannot manufacture organic unity.
Let's talk about the money, because $175,000 annually is a headline number. That is a significant financial outlay to expand commission infrastructure at the national level.
It reflects higher control with unclear accountability.
The resolution claims that this commission will serve congregations by providing guidance and resources. But in reality, it asks the Synod, which relies entirely on funds passed up from the local congregations, to fund a larger administrative structure at the national level.
We really have to ask, what is the actual return on investment for the kingdom here?
Right. Let's unpack this with some real-world perspective. $175,000 a year to reinstate a commission. What could $175,000 do if it was left at the grassroots level?
So much.
It could fully fund a new church plant in an unchurched urban area. It could save a struggling parochial school from closing its doors. It could pay the salary and benefits for 2 specialized mercy workers.
Easily.
So the question the delegate must ask is this commission providing a vital, absolutely necessary toolbox of resources for a small, struggling congregation that they couldn't already get from Concordia Publishing House?
Or are we just building a permanent HR department for liturgy?
An HR department for liturgy. That is a brilliant way to frame the risk here, because the danger of bureaucracy is that it always justifies its own existence.
Always.
If you create a permanent funded commission, They have to do something to justify their budget. That usually means producing more rules, more guidelines, and more oversight, even if the local churches don't actually need it.
So, what are the floor strategy options for a delegate who is concerned about expanding the castle's footprint here?
Yeah, what's the play?
There are several distinct avenues a delegate can take. First, if you believe the commission has some value but shouldn't be permanent, you could propose an amendment to add a strict sunset clause.
Like we saw with the mission priorities.
Exactly. This would mean the commission exists for exactly one triennium to produce specific requested resources and then completely dissolves unless the next convention votes to renew it.
That keeps them accountable.
Second, you could propose an amendment modifying the funding level to something much more sustainable, perhaps relying on volunteer experts rather than paid staff. Or third, if you think the structure is entirely wrong-headed, you could propose a substitute resolution to create a temporary, unfunded advisory team composed of existing, active parish pastors rather than a permanent, salaried synodical commission.
It's all about finding the balance between upholding faithful, historic worship and building unnecessary bureaucracy that drains resources from the edges.
Exactly. Keep the money in the kingdom.
Okay, let's transition. We've spent a massive amount of time looking inward at the church's own plumbing, how we structure our missions, oversee our workers, and organize our worship. Now let's look at how the church interacts with the deeply secular world around it.
This is where it gets very practical for the layperson.
Let's pivot to Resolution 407, to condemn political violence and encourage participation in public life. This is on page 91.
This is a very timely resolution given the incredibly fractured cultural and political climate we are all living in.
The mechanism here is straightforward, and it's mostly a public statement rather than a structural change. This resolution denounces all forms of political violence and explicitly urges Christians to engage peacefully, lawfully, and actively in civic life.
The arguments in the text address the undeniable cultural issue of deep political polarization, anger, and violence in the secular sphere.
Which we see on the news every day.
Right. But what makes this a fundamentally strong, uniquely Lutheran resolution is that it is heavily supported by classic Two Kingdoms theology.
Okay, let's do a quick ELI 5, I'm 5 for our listeners, on Two Kingdoms theology, because it is crucial to understanding how Lutherans view politics.
Simply put, Two Kingdoms theology is the biblical understanding that God rules the world in two distinct ways.
Two ways. All right.
He rules the church, which we call the right-hand kingdom, through the gospel, through grace, forgiveness, and the sacraments. There is no coercion in the right-hand kingdom. It is entirely built on faith. But God also rules the secular world, the left-hand kingdom, through the law, through secular government, human reason, and civil order. The left-hand kingdom does use coercion, like the police or the military, to punish evil and maintain peace.
And the beauty of this theology is that it prevents the church from confusing the two.
It keeps the lanes clear.
When the church tries to rule the secular state with the gospel, you get anarchy. When the state tries to rule the church with the sword, you get tyranny.
Exactly. And this resolution operates beautifully within that framework. It doesn't confuse the two. It acknowledges that the state has the authority to maintain order, but it condemns citizens using violence to achieve political ends.
I really praise this resolution for being incredibly outward-facing.
Yeah.
It names actual public servants, police officers, judges, elected officials.
Real vocations.
Yes, it names lay people living their daily vocations.
Yeah.
And it keeps the distinction between law and gospel completely clear. It doesn't say that voting for a specific candidate is a matter of eternal salvation. It doesn't try to build a Christian theocracy.
In the action section, it encourages civic participation without mandating a political preference. It gives local congregations and lay people practical pathways for public witness that are truthful, pastoral, and intelligible to their non-Christian neighbors.
It basically says be involved, be peaceful, be good, rational citizens who advocate for justice, but don't place your ultimate hope in a politician.
Structurally, it reflects very low control and high accountability to Scripture. It trusts the laity to actually live out their vocations in the world.
And as far as floor strategy goes, this is highly likely to be a consent calendar candidate. It is a clear, faithful, and non-controversial application of Lutheran theology to a modern problem.
Which brings us to a resolution that is, well, slightly more complex, but deals with similar cultural territory. Resolution 408. To direct the Commission on Theology and Church Relations to examine current political and social issues. This is on page 92.
Okay, before we dive into this one, we need to make something crystal clear to you, the listener. The source documents for this resolution name highly charged, extremely polarizing political and cultural issues that span across the entire political spectrum, left, right, and center.
Very sensitive topics.
Our job here on the Deep Dive is not to take a side on these issues. We are absolutely not endorsing any political viewpoint, nor are we evaluating the validity or the danger of these secular ideologies ourselves.
Right. That is not our role.
We are strictly, impartially reporting on what this resolution says, what the original source material claims, and how it directs the Synod to respond structurally.
That is a vital disclaimer. So looking completely objectively at the text, the basic mechanism is that this resolution directs the CTCR, which is the Commission on Theology and Church Relations, the Synod's primary theological think tank, to thoroughly study contemporary secular ideologies.
And it names them, right?
Yes. The text specifically names Marxism, critical race theory, identity politics, and aberrations associated with Christian nationalism. It directs the CTCR to produce a document providing theological guidance for the Synod regarding these specific topics.
In the arguments section, the resolution expresses a deep pastoral concern over the harmful division caused by these secular distortions. By naming specific issues that are typically associated with the political left, like CRT, and issues typically associated with the political right, like Christian nationalism, it attempts to be comprehensive and balanced in its critique of secular overreach.
Analytically, we can observe that it aims to provide faithful care for those who are confused or harmed by these ideologies. It is an exercise in doctrinal distinction-keeping, drawing clear, bright lines between scriptural truth and modern secular philosophy.
But its ultimate goal is to be a bridge-building resource for pastoral care.
Right. The resolution recognizes that parish pastors, parochial school teachers, and lay leaders are dealing with these bitter divisions right now in their pews and classrooms.
The action section directs a comprehensive study by the CTCR, which will eventually be published and disseminated to pastors, teachers, and schools who are desperately looking for guidance.
Evaluated through our structural lens, this provides theological clarity and local ministry support, rather than forcing uniformity through a top-down mandate dictating how a Lutheran must vote or exactly what news they can watch. It offers intellectual and theological resources for respectful engagement.
It equips the worker to handle these disputes contextually without weakening the historic Lutheran confession. Okay, but this raises a massive practical question. Let's role play again.
Right.
Let's say I'm a parish pastor. My congregation is bitterly divided. Half my members watch one highly partisan cable news network, the other half watch a completely different partisan network, and they are constantly arguing and insulting each other on Facebook.
A very real scenario.
Does a high-level academic, heavily footnoted CTCR document actually help me deal with that real-time, relational, flesh-and-blood division in my parish?
That is the absolute crux of the issue, and it's where the blueprint meets the mud. A 60-page theological treatise is intellectually valuable for setting the boundaries of Orthodox belief.
Sure.
But it often does not translate directly to a tense voters' meeting or a heated argument in the church parking lot. The CTCR is universally respected for deep, robust, precise theology, but sometimes local pastors don't just need a theological white paper.
Right.
They need practical, actionable, pastoral guidance on conflict resolution and catechesis.
So what can a delegate do on the floor to ensure this resolution actually produces something that helps the local church survive this cultural moment?
Delegates might want to propose amendments regarding the process and the timeline of the study. For instance, the machinery of the Synod moves very slowly.
It takes years.
You could propose an amendment shortening the timeline for the study so the church isn't waiting 3 to 4 years for an answer to a problem that is literally tearing congregations apart today.
That makes a lot of sense.
But more importantly, you could propose an amendment requiring the CTCR to consult with diverse ground-level voices while writing the document. Mandate that they include parish pastors who have successfully navigated these divisions, Christian sociologists, and laypeople who actually work in secular, politically charged environments.
Bring in the people dealing with it on Tuesday morning, not just Sunday.
Ensure the final document isn't just academically sound, but practically useful and accessible for the average layperson.
Turn it from a theoretical white paper into a usable pastoral tool. Okay, staying on the cutting edge of modern challenges, let's look at Resolution 409. to address uses of artificial intelligence, found on pages 92 and 93.
This is a fascinating intersection of ancient theology and bleeding-edge technology.
The core action here is that this resolution encourages the responsible use of AI by church workers and directs the CTCR to develop a formal theological statement regarding its ethical and ministry implications.
The arguments in the text acknowledge the rapid, undeniable growth of technology, and it specifically addresses a very modern, almost sci-fi pastoral concern.
Which is?
The source overtures explicitly mention rejecting AI-created sermons.
Which is wild to think about, but here we are. It is entirely possible right now to type a Bible verse into an AI chatbot, tell it to write a 15-minute sermon with a poignant opening joke and 3 points of application, and read it from the pulpit.
It's happening in some places.
But through our lens, this resolution is very outward-facing. It acknowledges the reality of the modern world rather than hiding from it, and it does a great job of distinguishing core doctrine from technological preference.
We have to dig into the theology of the word here to understand why an AI sermon is so problematic for Lutherans.
Let's do it.
The pastoral ministry is fundamentally incarnational. A human being, a sinner who has been redeemed by Christ, is called by a congregation to publicly proclaim the law that condemns him and the gospel that saves him.
Right.
An algorithm cannot repent. An algorithm cannot be called by a congregation. Therefore, an algorithm cannot preach.
It doesn't have a soul.
But the resolution also recognizes that using AI to help organize your Greek syntax notes or outline a Bible study schedule is just a technological preference, like using a word processor instead of a typewriter.
Exactly. It's nuance. In the action section, it directs the CTCR to study AI ethics. This gives local congregations, and importantly, LCMS laypeople who work as tech professionals, a practical pathway to integrate their faith and technology ethically.
It reflects low control and high accountability. It's not burying its head in the sand and banning computers. It's serving congregations by providing necessary intellectual capital to navigate a confusing new landscape.
But I see a glaring timeline problem here, similar to the last resolution.
The speed of technology.
Yes. For floor strategy, delegates have an opportunity to make this resolution actually relevant. Technology moves exponentially faster than the synodical triennia.
It moves in months, not years.
You do not want a paper on AI published in 2029 that is reacting to the technology of 2026. It will be completely obsolete the day it is printed. A delegate absolutely needs to propose an amendment to set a much tighter, specific deadline for a preliminary CTCR statement.
Furthermore, a delegate could formally move to amend the resolution to invite or even mandate input from LCMS laypeople who actually work as engineers and developers in the technology sector.
Oh, that's a great idea.
The church has brilliant tech experts sitting in the pews every Sunday. We should use them to help draft this guidance, rather than relying solely on theologians who might not fully grasp the underlying code.
Utilize the priesthood of all believers. I love it. All right, we have arrived at the final resolution for Floor Committee 4, Resolution 410. To celebrate Concordia Historical Institute's centenary and renew the Synod's commitment to treasure and trumpet its redeemed history. Pages 93 to 94.
A joyful, straightforward resolution to wrap up the committee's massive portfolio.
The action here is very simple. A resolution to formally thank God for the 100-year anniversary of the Concordia Historical Institute, or CHI, which is the official archive of the LCMS, and to encourage the preservation of synodical history at the local level.
The arguments are purely historical and Thanksgiving points. It frames our life together as a shared, redeemed heritage. It reminds us that we are part of a story much larger than ourselves.
The impact here is a joyful encouragement for congregations to remember their roots. It reflects absolutely zero structural control and is an expression of pure gospel thanksgiving for the faithfulness of God over the past century.
And as for floor strategy, this is absolutely destined for the consent calendar. It is a unifying, celebratory action that requires no debate.
Okay, let's take a deep breath. We have unpacked 10 deeply complex structural and theological resolutions.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
We've talked about youth catechesis, massive bylaw amendments that centralize power, RSO oversight, chaplains' titles, a $175,000 worship commission, political violence, secular ideologies, artificial intelligence, and historical archives.
It is a massive, weighty portfolio for Floor Committee 4.
It truly is. And if I can offer a final provocative thought to bring this entire deep dive together for the delegate. When you look at the portfolio of Floor Committee 4 as a whole, you see a profound, almost tectonic tension beneath the surface.
We really do.
On one hand, We have resolutions deeply desiring outward mission and local catechesis, looking out at a hurting world that desperately needs the gospel. But sitting right next to those, wrapped in the exact same binders, we have structural resolutions that centralize power, remove local circuit forums, expand paid national commissions, and tighten institutional oversight on mercy workers.
The blueprints are literally showing two different buildings. One is open and outward-facing. The other is closed and heavily fortified.
Exactly. So as you head to Phoenix, ask yourself this fundamental question. Is the LCMS building a fortress to protect its history, or is it building a launch pad to reach the world?
That is the question.
Because your votes on these specific bylaws, your votes on who gets to plan the mission, who gets to oversee the workers, and where the money flows, will decide which building actually gets funded and constructed.
That is the defining issue of the convention right there. Fortress or launchpad? Kingdom or castle?
Well, Delegate, we want to enthusiastically thank you for taking this deep dive into the convention materials with us. We know your time is incredibly valuable, and your preparation matters immensely to the future of the church.
Absolutely.
We pray for your safe travels to Phoenix. We encourage you to step up to the microphone and ask the hard questions. And above all, we ask you to vote with a steadfast focus on kingdom over castle. Safe travels, and we'll see you on the floor.